Welcome to Forged in Silence podcast, where we address issues men face but rarely talk about. And today, Robbie and I have invited a friend of ours, Kenny. It's nice to see you again.
Thanks, man.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Let's see. I was about to do a very masculine thing, speaking of the topic, and just kind of end with that. But let me check in real quick. Let me actually check in with that. How am I doing? I'm doing good. I'm a little bit nervous for this. I always get nervous for these sort of things. I have like these insecurities that pop up, and then like this morning, because I was kind of processing stuff and then taking notes in my head, and then I was like there's one part of me that's like, okay, well, you're gonna screw up, and then potentially this topic too is like in today's culture, and talk about a way to get canceled if you really want to be honest, and then also, so I have that part of me, and then I have this other part of me that's like, okay, this is for myself with having a small podcast, the benefit of having a small podcast is, other than my wife and kids, the people that are going to listen is maybe you two, and then we're good to go. So we don't have to really worry about the cancel thing.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty hard to cancel us right now, too. There's only 23 subscribers. My goal for the end of the semester is 100. So if you are listening right now, and if you are new, and if you like this episode or previous episodes, make sure you hit subscribe so I can meet my goal for the end of the semester.
Check out that segue, dude. Wow.
You like that?
Good. I mean, you're
like
a professional. You just got to subscribe for me just for that segue. That was good.
You handed it to me. So I had to take it. I had to take it and talk about being canceled. Kenny, you're on your social media platform. You have the knack of saying things people don't want to hear. You do. I've already told you this. You've inspired me in my own journey when it came to talking about failure and resilience. One of the main reasons why I think you are a great asset to come on to our show and talk about your journey of like why you thought going on a journey of resilience was important to you. Because for us here, personal experience trumps everything, right? It trumps what you read in books. It trumps everything else. It's how did you get to where you got to? Why do you have this passion for this thing? And I know you have a really cool story about all of this, and Robbie and I will jump in for sure.
Yeah. Let's see. So I almost said something right from the gate, a joke that came up that would have got me canceled, so I'm going to not say that one. I said this joke. Okay, I'm just going to say it because it's funny to me. So I did I did a discipleship program thing several years ago, and that was kind of at the beginning stage of this. I was about 3 years sober when I started that program, and then for some reason they decided to make me like the I don't know what the name for it, but it was like valedictorian essentially. I don't know what the name for it was, so I had to go up and do the speech. And at the start of my speech, I said I was born a poor black child, and it's a great joke from The Jerk. It's a fantastic Steve Martin joke. And in this audience, it was just like so silent. Dead silent. And then luckily, I happened to have a couple of friends in there that after a moment gave me some like attaboy laughter to kind of help, move the thing going. So anyway,
So you would stop sweating in that moment? So you would stop sweating in that moment because Kenny didn't know his audience very well.
I think that's like for me. I think that's what makes it funny in my own head is that it's like that awkward silence is going to be hilarious. Not at the moment, but afterwards when I think about it. Okay, so yeah, I wasn't born a poor black child, but Let's see. Middle class, lower middle class family. I think had some childhood traumas early on. The earliest one would be my parents' divorce when I was 3, and my mom leaving and having to deal with that as a 3-year-old and not being able to understand what that is, And so, I work in this field of counseling, and I know a lot of people when they kind of share their childhood experience, they negate it by saying, but there's many people that have it worse.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I try to conceptualize that for them, I'm like, your brain had no way to conceptualize the fact that other people had it worse. You just knew that your world was completely blown up. And so for me, that's what it was. And there were some other things that happened around that time period that I remember very vividly that were pretty traumatizing. And then eventually my parents remarried, and I got the good end of the deal, right? I got more siblings out of it, more parents out of it, and all that. But it didn't heal those kind of raw wounds that I had as a child. And other kind of experiences happened as I got a little bit older through teenage years and things that, was whatever, birthed insecurities and a need to mask those insecurities through what I thought was like, a topic for today, masculinity, kind of how I was taught to be a man. And this wasn't directly like taught to me. I didn't have anybody sit down, especially my dad, sit down and say, these are the things that you need to be a man. Because my dad didn't exhibit a lot of these things himself. It's just more of the people that I looked up to, the males around me that I looked up to. And the kind of rule of thumb was like, the person that can fight the best, the best athlete, the person that can have the most sex, the person that can drink the most, these are the best males, and so I kind of had this, I guess, thought process towards that's what a man is. And I became really good at like one of those things, which was the drinking side of things really early. I became really good at that. But so, and then, I got into addiction pretty early on and began to realize, that substances, like I said, I could do well. Those made me feel good. Those were the answers to help take away insecurities. They made me more outgoing. I felt like I was better, a better person, a funnier person. And so I could talk to girls really well when I was drunk. So anyway, fast forwarding a little bit, I went into the Army. The story of even how I got into the Army is pretty crazy, but went into the Army, and that was my first detox, was actually in basic training. And then my second detox was in Afghanistan.
Detox. So the first detox is in basic training, and the second one is overseas.
Yeah, in Afghanistan. That's where I had.
Yeah,
to
nice work.
Too. Yeah,
nice work.
Yeah, not a good way to sweat out the alcohol in the system.
In the desert.
In the desert, or while really large men with flat brim hats are yelling at you. So anyway, that was the process in military, saw combat, had PTSD from that, and that just increased. Like, I didn't really realize I had PTSD from combat until about 6 months after I came back. I started to have some really weird things going on in my head and violent sort of visions to harm people. And this sort of stuff. And then I had a situation where a girl who was my fiance at the time, I kind of say quotes around that because it was just like part of the PTSD was that I knew I was going to die. I was going to go back into combat, and I knew I was going to die on the second tour. And that felt as real as anything. And so kind of processing that, I was like, well, I want to leave my seed behind. And so when after I die, I want to make sure I have a child behind. So I found somebody just as insecure as me, and just as lost as me, to be able to kind of take on that mantle. And we quickly rushed into this, being engaged.
Situationship thing.
Yeah. And so anyway, I mean, it was like, I don't know how to say it. It was like, I didn't really understand the full breadth of the concept of love at the time. So it was just like physical attraction meets like we're both insecure enough to be with each other and rely on each other.
Meets physical attraction meets similarities, unhealthy similarities.
Yes. Yeah.
I get that. I think.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think the definition of love changes in your 20s, it changes in your 30s, and it changes in your 40s. At least from my experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's such a broad spectrum, but. I mean, that's not really a topic for today, but if you want me to talk on that, I can. But anyway, so moving forward a little bit, that relationship didn't work out. She ended up sleeping. She was back here in Sacramento, and then I was in Fort Drum, New York. And as a way to kind of have her integrate with my friends, one time when I was back home, I had them meet my friends, and one of my very good friends, a guy I considered a best friend at the time, happened to find her as lovely as I did, and so the two of them hooked up, and that put me into this suicidal situation where I was hospitalized for a month up in Watertown, New York, in this hospital near Fort Drum, New York. So yeah, in a mental hospital. That was a fun experience, and I don't even say that in a joking way. Like literally, there's some memories that I have there, not from like a clinical standpoint, not from like just like having some great therapy there or anything, but it was like just the experience there of being around other crazy people was fun. And so and it was like you felt seen and you didn't feel judged, and you kind of just felt like you're anyway. So that was my first hospitalization stint, but got out of the Army with medical discharge and honorable discharge due to the PTSD, and they gave me $15,000 when I got out, and $15,000 chops up real nicely and creates a lot of meth. And so
chops up real nicely. As soon as you said that, I was like, "Oh God, here he goes."
Yeah. So that just led into more mental health issues and more addiction issues, and again, just kind of fast forwarding through things. One thing led into the next, and my dad ended up finding out because I dropped my drugs at his house while doing a job at his house, and he pulled me aside. One day he let me kind of sweat for several weeks, which was interesting. And it was during this period of time, this several weeks, where like this underbelly of like, I think I need to be done with drugs and alcohol in order to progress in life, because I couldn't stand the person I am. I hated the person I was. I was like low key suicidal. And yeah, just like, obviously if you're abusing meth, and drinking a fifth a night, then your mental health is, just completely depraved. So anyway, my dad confronted me, and like I said, there was about like a 2-week period where I was like sweating, like, what did that happen? The only place I could imagine that I lost it was at my dad's. And so this kind of seed of me knowing I needed to stop started to get watered and watered, just kind of like waiting for when is the shoe going to drop. Mm-hmm. And I had this great excuse for when people would kind of look at me funny or call me out because of my weird behavior. I'd be like, I served my country. Like, how dare you question me? Like, kind of had this great excuse for my very bipolar behavior. And so when my dad confronted me, I was ready to give that back.
Yeah.
No, I was ready to be like, like, screw you. Like,
Oh,
don't
okay.
you
You were
know what
ready.
I've seen?
You
You
were.
know, like, yeah.
Those were fighting words.
Yeah, yeah. And so something weird happened though. He confronted me like a man. He confronted me with respect instead of like a child that I probably deserved to be confronted. And he said, "I know you're doing this thing. Are you doing this thing?" And I said, and the weirdest thing came out of my mouth. I said, "Yes." And I was honest. And then he kind of seemed a little bit taken back by that. And then he said, "Okay, well, I can't have you working for me while you're doing this, but I can offer you help. Do you want help?" And again, I was shocked by my answer and what came out of my mouth. I said yes. And whenever I talk about this, I get pretty emotional because like this changed my life.
Turning point for Kenny.
Yeah, it's this confrontation that my dad offered me was life changing. It was everything, and everything I have today is because of that moment. And I got to 10 years into my sobriety when he died. Just to kind of close that circle, like I one thing I do when I in the rooms, and I know this isn't like a sobriety, but focus.
It's where we come from.
Mental
No,
health, mental health,
Yep.
and sobriety are combined, and so they
Yep.
are within themselves. And so anyway, when I get my 1 to 2 year, when I get my coins, I don't keep them. I grab them. I write a letter to somebody that was significant to me in my sobriety, and then I give them the coin, and that's what I do with them. And so this was my 10th year. This was a big year. So, I wrote this letter to my dad essentially saying like, "Hey, you saved my life. Not only have you provided me life and been there for me and kind of modeled what a hardworking man does for his family, but you saved my life, and your grandbabies are here because of that, and so I remember this was at the Super Bowl. This was the Super Bowl where Brady came back against the Falcons. We were all at my dad's house. Me and my brothers, family is at my dad's house. And I remember the Super Bowl well because nobody's paying attention at halftime now because Falcons are in such a lead. And then Tom Brady starts kind of chipping away at this lead. And me and my dad are the only one in the living room just kind of like, "Oh my gosh, this is crazy. What's happening?" And anyway, I left the letter up there on the counter for my dad to read, and I just told him as I was leaving, "Hey Dad, there's this letter up there for you. Please when you get a chance, read it." And I was taking my wife and my family out to the car, and we get in the car, and as we're about to leave, there's a knock on the window, and I roll down my window, and it's Dad, and Dad's a big man, and he's reaching through the car window to try to give me a hug, and he can't really fit. I'm like, "Hold on, Dad, like, let's do this right." So I get out of the car and I give him a hug, and like I said, he's a big man, and I can't reach my arms fully around him, but his weight falls into me, and he's just crying and weeping, and it's by far the greatest moment I've ever had with my dad. And I got a call about 3 or 4 days later that from my sister, who's crying and kind of in hysterics. Dad's in the hospital. They had to take him to the hospital. He's had a heart attack. Come down now. So quickly get out there. And my dad died. And to have that as this moment was huge for me. And I didn't plan on talking about that, but it kind of came up, and I guess it comes up as we're talking about masculinity and manliness. So I got sober. I went to a discipleship program. After that, I had the courage to go back to school because I knew that I was supposed to be working with working in the mental health field, specifically with addiction and trauma. And so I went and I started doing that. And that was it's been a crazy journey in doing that. I'm now 18 years sober, and I've had my own thriving private practice now for about 7 years. And it's incredible. I get to do this thing where I get to be of service to other people and use some of the experience that I know that has helped me progress within my own mental health. And then I get to use that and also some of the book knowledge and neuroscience that's out there, and just kind of use that and help people continue to strive forward. But I know I kind of got lost in that story with my dad. It just came up organically there, but that's where I'm at today. I have a family. I have 4 boys, and right now I'm currently coaching 2 teams, and all 4 of them are on 3 teams. And so I have this thing up here, and this is where we're talking about. This is my gym / podcast studio, and I have this. When I was in that discipleship program, one of the assignments that they had us do was write out what your life goal is. What do you want to do with your life? And literally, I'm looking at it right now. There's this the woman who is running the class. She took this and put it into a frame for me. But it's Proverbs 17:6, and it says, "Children's children are the crown of old men, and the glory of children is their father." And under it, it says, "I want sons to coach." And this was way before I had any kids, right? Like years before.
Yep. Wow.
And so here we are now. I have 4 sons that I get to coach.
That you get to coach.
And I don't mean just like coach baseball with, but I mean like coach in life, right? And get to model to them. And so, yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
It's a gift all on its own, isn't it? Go for it, Robbie.
I want to go back to something you said, as you were talking about the men you looked up to as when you're growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Steve and I have talked about this before, and it's a reoccurring thing with young boys when we're growing up. We look up to, you were saying the athletes, the guy who slept with most women, that kind of thing. Like, we look up and we see these men that we think are men and masculine. With me not having my dad play a role in my childhood, it was all a thought process for me. What did I look up to? And there was a lot of good things, but there was also a lot of bad things, the same as you, Kenny, with where I thought was a man, what I looked up to. My question is, I've grown up with kids that had really cool dads that are very masculine, all that stuff, but they still ran into problems in their life, still dealing with problems. Where in, a young boy's mind do we find these masculine men that we look up to? And what do you think is the right and the wrong? Now we got a lot of stuff in society, but where do you think that goes wrong in a lot of young boys' minds?
So where do I think what they're looking up to naturally as men goes wrong, or as masculine goes wrong?
Yeah, exactly.
So so I'll give you an answer as to what I think. But and then can I kind of define the terms between masculine and then and kind of go into that and break that down?
Sure.
Okay. Sure. So I think there's naturally, especially with boys, there's this natural biological right, grunting and wanting to do things, like you're naturally enthralled by this type of thing. And so like my kids, I noticed this with my first two. I was like, they're not like being taught in any way to like do these traditional boy things, like I don't know, like put dirt in their mouth. My second child would like, he would just like take mud and put it in his mouth. Like be little tiny, what you envision as a caveman, right? Like just being little tiny, like it makes no logical sense in terms of what you're doing. But why do you feel the need to fight? Like when you see Grandpa, why do you need to go up to him instead of going to give him a hug? You want to go and start wrestling him automatically. Like what is that? And so I think there's natural biological reasons for why men are the way they are and women are the way they are, and I don't think we need to dismiss that because it dismisses truth. And so I think culture and TV and these types of things can embellish on that and almost like make
skew it.
It's skewing it to a superhero level, right? And to this thing that is not realistic, but you can't help but to be drawn to it, you know, monster trucks and all this stuff. Like this is just, it's just for some reason we're drawn to it. And I think part of that is just, I think it, like, there's no way to say it other than biology.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I think there's that. Does that kind of answer the question, you think, or did I not?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. You know, because like, who draws the line, right? Because even our fathers are still into that stuff too. Like, you know, athletes or actors or whatever, they're still into that also at this age. We could even say at our age now that we look at this and we say this is masculine, even though it's a pipe dream type of thing, right? It's something that we can interpret as being masculine in our own thoughts and our own opinions, but it's not always true. And I don't want to use the word society, but we're going to have to use that because...
We're going to have to use that,
Yeah. Even though there's a little bit of, we could go all over the place. But I'm just thinking about, role models. I remember through school and, like, school would present this person as a role model, then come to find out he beat his wife and whatever years later. And it's like, I just don't know where we draw that line on what is a real role model and who is someone a young boy can look up to. Besides, and this is just like besides their father and their family. Like, we got to get out of the superheroes, and we got to get out of the athletes, and we got to get out of the musicians, all that superficial stuff that we may never become.
Yeah. So
you're you're talking about just straight up reality.
Yeah.
What is staying in reality as opposed to getting your head out of the television or social media.
So what I'd say is, who can they look up to? So that kind of that might be another cancellation question.
Answer it.
Because other men, fathers.
Yep.
Older siblings.
I don't think
coaches.
that's a cancellation answer.
Yeah,
I don't think that's a cancellation. It's literally.
So,
Is the answer to that somebody who potentially inspires them? Like, it doesn't have to be your father that inspires you if that they are just not capable of doing that in a way that relates to you, right? Yeah. Like, I think as a father, if we're going to speak about that, you want to inspire in a way that relates to your kid. You don't want to force your child to do the thing that you want them to do, and that's supposed to be what's inspiring.
Right. Yeah.
I'm just thinking about you being as a coach. How many of those boys look up to you as a father figure or as a masculine man? That they're learning something from you.
I don't. I don't go into it thinking that I'm trying to be masculine or trying to be manly. And I'm using those terms differently because I want to go over the difference, but in terms of how I see it. But I look at it like I'm trying to model to them integrity. I'm trying to keep them accountable. They're at an age where, like let's say if at this point in the season, if they're playing catch and they're goofing off, then they got to get down and do 10 push-ups sort of thing and re-straighten their mind forward. And if I'm paying attention and I'm seeing are one of them just going to drop down and do the push-ups because they notice they're goofing off, or are they waiting for someone to tell them to get down and do the push-ups? Right. And so we're looking for character and integrity. And if they don't do it and they need the talk of like, okay, so here's what you're doing. You're waiting for me to tell you to do something when you know you ought to do it. Okay, so that's the lack of integrity. Here's what I want you to do instead. And so we're able to have those talks beyond like, okay, this is a first and third situation. Do you throw it down to second base on a steal? It's beyond baseball situational conversations. Mm-hmm. It's more like, are you respecting your teammates? Are you cheering on your teammates? Are you going up to bat with a certain mentality of fear or a certain mentality of I'm just trying to be the best version of myself right now? So there's different sorts of things that we can get to work on as coaches. And I think by proxy, by me just being a man that's totally accepting of my masculinity, then they get to see a man who models masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, do you want me to go over this in terms of the terms?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Or what I came
Go
up
for
with?
it. Yeah.
So, and so this is okay. So, I understand that today there's a different understanding. I think there's been like 3 waves of masculinity in terms of the definition of it. There might be more, but I'll just say 3 in terms of recent history, because there's kind of the original understanding of masculinity. Then there was a shift with the toxic masculinity thing where all of a sudden out of nowhere there was a shift into being like, no, like these are actually masculine features. And I think that was weird that they started to change the definition of things. And I have a big problem with changing definitions of words. And like they could just come up with a new word. They don't have to change the definition. And now because of that huge shift in one direction, there's starting to be this pile up on another direction towards the acceptance of masculinity again. But there's kind of like this timidness towards it. Timidity, I guess is the better word or an accurate word. Okay, so let me go over this. So the way I see masculinity and manliness, I see masculinity as a feature of manliness, and manliness is a spectrum or an all-encompassing of many different features. So first, let's go over the masculine features. Adventurous, someone who takes risks. They protect out of like from a physical being willing to protect physically, violently. They provide by grinding and doing really, really hard things and just grinding. And I'm going to work at this time every day, and I'm not going to complain about it. I'm just going to go and do it. Right. I mentioned aggressive. They're physically strong. They're verbally restrained. Some would say stoic. I don't know if stoic completely fits there, but verbally restrained. They're courageous. They're sexually driven. They're rigid and sturdy. Okay. These are features that I would say are more traditional within the term of masculinity. And then when we look at manliness and which again, masculinity needs to be integrated within manliness. But when we look at a fuller spectrum of manliness, then you're looking at somebody who yields to God or a higher power, somebody who's willing to evolve, not be so rigid and sturdy, willing to lose themselves emotionally, but in a way that doesn't perpetuate chaos. So they're finding a safe way with a particular, maybe an accountability partner or a safe person to be willing to lose themselves emotionally and have that the same way I just cried in front of you guys and the two other people that are watching this right now are going to watch this. And then let's see what else. They honor women and the elderly. Like, they honor them. They don't just, it's not just respect, it's honor. There's a sense of like holding to high esteem women and elderly. They choose not to quit in marriages, and they because oath and loyalty and integrity is everything. So on their end, they're unwilling to yield in that way. They find meaning. They find meaning and purpose and value within family and raising children. They're patient and understanding. Right. This is something that is not a masculine trait, but it is a manly trait. And for me, like, I would say, like, my bias is from like a Christian foundation or let's say a biblical foundation of the only perfect man that's ever existed. Christ was the lion and the lamb. He was the full spectrum, right? Like, he was coming through to wreck shop, but also at the same time he would take space to pray and meditate. He would weep. He wept openly, like aggressively wept for a friend that had died. And he's like the total embodiment of adaptation, literally from God becoming human. Like, he is the embodiment of adapting, right? And man needs to have the capacity to be able to adapt. That's something that masculinity in of itself doesn't allow for, because it's so rigid in nature. It's so stubborn and stern. But the embodiment of masculinity means it requires evolution. It requires adaptation. And also, like, there's this sense of being able to stay true and authentic to moral compasses as well, right? And not be able to not have culture or not have situations completely persuade you in the opposite direction. So there's this kind of full spectrum there in terms of manliness. And so, and then like, another thing too is like, men are meant to carry burdens. Like, we just talked about the biological nature of things, and men get a bad rap for keeping things surface. And I think keeping things surface 100% of the time is a problem. But keeping things surface most of the time, that's the biological nature. Like, men have a lot going on up here.
I think you keep things surface where it's necessary, and then you go below the surface in the spaces that you have or that you've created, so you can go to that next level, so you can meet somewhere in an emotional way, as opposed to just talking about the surface things. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Weather, sports, just generality in that sense, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I think when we're talking about that full spectrum, that balance of lion and lamb, that balance of warrior and poet, it's like being able to make sure that you have the capacity. It's a tool that is sharp enough to be able to use when it needs to be used. It's not a tool that just sits there and never gets used. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, I think you need to have a willingness both ways. And what makes it brave, or what makes it courageous, is the ability to use it when it's necessary, but also to not use it when it isn't.
So the big thing that you said there, Steve, was willingness, right? So when I look at the difference, but if I were to look at it, the difference between masculine and manliness, or being a man, I would say one is willpower and one is willingness. Mm-hmm. Right? One is filled with this overall sense of willpower and grind and sort of that kind of straightforwardness, and the other one is willingness, which is required for evolution and adaptation.
Yeah, and you like I was listening to you speak of the thoughts on masculinity and then manliness and stuff like that. And I literally just wrote a speech for a class that was on modern masculinity, and it touched on a bunch of the nuance because it's nuanced, right? I mean, we just finished, and you probably watched the episode that was before this. That was us talking to a couple of ladies about this very topic, right? And what it looks like to them, and what they feel as a requirement for them from a man. It's a lot of what you just said in a softer, different way that comes from them. One of the things from both ladies was emotional safety from them, not just like the physical standpoint. If you look at the way life is and the way we operate now as a society, it's not even close to like the caveman ways. You've gone from the industrial sort of thing, and now we're in this sort of technological age where the being protective looks a lot different today than it did 40 years ago. Right? So the evolution inside of that is, where does the man sit? How do you feel like a man? I think every man wants to feel like a man. Every man wants that feeling. It's a feeling that they desire, and you can get that from a bunch of different ways. One of that is just for providing, being that part. But I mean, once again, it's a nuanced thing, and I think you touched on how masculinity, I say there's been basically an attack on masculinity for the past decade or so. And you kind of said that in a different way, and it's coming back. It is in a very, very, what feels like a trickle, that it's turning a corner again. And I think part of it is women are wondering where the fucking guys went. Like, where are they? Yeah. Where they're frustrated because, like, a bunch of them have been knocked off their pedestal. They don't know where the heck to stand anymore. So it's kind of like waiting in the winds. And Robbie talked about this in relationships. Like, what's the fucking point now, for the most part, because of the kneecapping that's kind of gone on. Mm-hmm. And so, right? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. So, in terms of like the kneecapping, I like the way you put that. So
Tanya Harding.
Yeah, Tanya Harding. Now, that's where masculine features can also go into the other sex, right? Tanya Harding, for example. Yeah. So, what I want to say? It was Jason Wilson. Are you guys aware of Jason Wilson? He's fantastic source for masculinity. This topic of masculinity. He's pretty well known in the like social media space. He has this jiu-jitsu dojo thing that he works with, where he works with young boys, particularly in the inner city, and helps them to helps them to know what masculinity is and to know what manliness is, and models to them those features, right, and helps to grow them. And he was talking about how, like, the alpha male side of this whole spectrum, the extreme end of the spectrum, which would probably be appropriately, I hate the term toxic masculinity, but we can place it on that side of things. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He was saying, like, everything for them is like going and getting the nice sports car, going and getting the nice physical body, going and getting all the money, and they pride themselves on being this alpha male, but everything about them is driven to impress women. So how can you be an alpha male if your only drive is to impress a woman? If that's your one drive? And so he's like, well, then you can't be alpha if your one drive is to chase women. So that's one spectrum of it, of the growth side of it, and then the other spectrum of it is, like you said, where have all the men gone? Like, because their drive is also to try to impress women, because the society, women are saying, we want the softer man, we want the man that's willing to do these things. But then ask a woman who's been married for 10 years, and they're going to tell you a little bit of a different story.
No.
And so, like, one of the nicest things my wife ever said to me was, "You make me feel safe." I'm like, that's like, oh my gosh, dude, that's like, check. Now I just got to keep checking that box every day for the rest of my life, and then I'll be good. But that's it. That's it for me. I do want to be able to make her feel safe, not just physically, not just be able to, if the power goes out, go and fix it, but also, and not just if some car pulls up to our property, which is in the middle of nowhere, not to go and address it. Not just those, but also to be there for her emotionally when something bad happens, like you were saying the women on the other episode mentioned. So, yeah.
I think that's a good point there is, when you were talking about the alpha, I think of the Tate brothers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Money, women, cars, whatever. Impress the women.
Bravado.
Your worth is only money and what you have.
Money and looks.
And the company you keep.
Mm-hmm.
But you also mentioned, that your wife says, you make her feel safe. And so that's a huge balance, right? If you don't have a woman that can communicate what safe means, I can think as masculine, it's, protection, all those strong things, the alpha male type, we could say. But then when you think of the manliness side, it's like, oh, there's a lot more to it. Emotion, like we often put, and this is just in relationships too, another person's emotions we put off for our own, because our problems are more of a big deal in the moment to us than someone else's problems. So we get stuck there in the whole communication gap. And I know in relationships, it's like, who's having the worst day? We can't meet in the middle type thing. Like, it doesn't matter. You don't have to meet in the middle, right? We both have to take the time out and go, oh, you're having a shitty day. Let me hear about it. But we have to be present too, right? I mean, I can speak for myself. How many times that I come home and like, oh, I'm having a horrible day. And I'm like, well, tell me about it. And I'm in la la land thinking about my next run or my next adventure. I'm not paying attention to any of this. I'm not present. Why? Because my own problems were more of a big deal. And I knew that I wouldn't get anything back if I sat down and had my emotions explained about what my day was going on with the other sex. And I've even found this in friendships. It's like, and I really like the whole alpha male thing. It's like, I'm just going to put it, who's got the bigger cock right now? Like, right? Like, we're going to do this show. And I know I found for myself, like, and this is an ego-driven thing too. It's like, once we get rid of that and we can just chill, like, we can open up and we can have conversations. And I really think that's where a lot of the breakdown is with women and men, is having that emotional safety. Women they want the money, the cars, the big guy, whatever. They want some traits over here. But then if they really get a guy that's open up and emotionally there and safe and all those other ways, they don't know what to do with it. Because they're not secure with themselves, because they're looking at something else as what they want to make them feel better.
In the end, I think both sides of the men and the women, both sides need to do work and communicate with each other. Right now, as a society, we don't allow We're not allowing two things to exist in the same space without fighting, without getting in an argument, without throwing hate or spewing shit. And what that does is it stops the communication between what a man needs and what a woman needs, and figuring out how to meet in the middle somewhere. And until we get the fuck over ourselves and say, okay, we actually need each other again, then when we meet in this spot in the middle, that's where the connection happens anyway. It doesn't happen when you meet me here all of the time or when I meet you there all of the time. It happens when we meet here and talk about this space over here and talk about this space over here.
Yeah, I'm not. So I think, let's say the scenario that Robbie laid out, like both of you are having a terrible day. And this is where, like, I'm a big fan of making sure you have another male accountability partner that you can talk with about stuff, because I don't believe spouses and wives should just know everything. Like, I think there's some things that, like, if they know everything, then chaos is there. And I'm not sure, like I said, on one end, a man still needs to have a safe space to process. But sometimes, especially if your spouse has shown you over and over and over that she's not that safe space because she's going to freak the F out, then she's not the space.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Yep.
100%. 100%.
So now, and that's not like all or nothing here and saying all spouses are there's maybe some spouses out there that are like really solid and can take it and hear it, and then not get on their own worry train. Right?
Not take it personally.
So, yeah. Or maybe it's not even not take it personal, but like, let's say a guy a man's worried about, let's keep it generic, his employment, right? And he's like, okay, so am I going to keep my job? I know there's layoffs here going on, and he's really concerned about it. And he knows that if he tells his wife or his spouse, because they've been together long enough, he knows if he says it, then she's going to start flipping out. She's going to start being concerned. Maybe she's going to talk to her parents. Like, he's like, oh, now I feel even more insecure. Now her parents know, like, because she wants to talk to everybody about it. And now, like, all my stuff's out in the open. Like, that's not a safe space for him.
That to me is a mistake.
Yeah.
I know it happens, right? But I mean, at the same time, there needs to be some mutual respect there. And to me, what the scenario you just came up with is not mutual respect.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's where, and it just might be. I don't think it's maybe even intentional disrespect. I think it's just the spouse just doing what she does, right? Like, I don't think there's like a lot of times it may not be an intent. It's the way, like, women process process
talking
way different than men, right? And I'm not even saying, there was some study recently that showed venting, like, the actual mental health benefits of venting, and it's not as good as we hoped that it would be. It's really not that good. That sucks. So then the summary of the study was like, well, like, vent in a way that has like pro-action afterwards instead of just kind of an open-ended ... afterwards. But anyway,
it just causes resentment.
Yes. Yeah. And so anyway, I lost my train of thought. What I was saying.
It's all good.
Yeah.
No, I think you there was a good thing you brought up though too. The men need a safe space, and it doesn't have to be their spouse. What do you say about men having another man, or it could even be a female, that they feel comfortable with telling that person how they feel, what's going on in their life. And how do you think that a spouse is supposed to feel about that other person?
Yeah, how the spouse is supposed to. So first, I would say, if it's a female, it better be a very, 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 very safe, and I mean like sexual orientation or like what your preference is, sexually safe person. If it's a female, if it's a male to female conversation,
Yeah.
or vice versa in the opposite direction, it
Yeah.
better be very, very safe, because that's a good way. Even if you're like, oh, we've been best friends for 20 years. Nope. That's not smart. That's a good way to create a lot of jealousy, and and a jealousy that isn't safe enough to talk about, because you're like, well, if I talk about my jealousy, like if she's like, if I talk about my jealousy, then he's going to think I'm a freak. Talk about not feeling safe in a relationship.
No shit.
Because of some selfish desire to keep a girl as a best friend. Again, like if there's like a sexual orientation thing that completely precludes that or something, then, or it's like a sister or something, then we're having a different conversation. But for the most part, it should be male on male sort of trustworthiness there. But okay, so the question was then, how should she receive it, and should the spouse be secured by that or further insecure about that? I think part of that is her own work. It depends on where she is. I think like if you have an insecure person, she anything that is not 100% driven through her is going to make her have some, like if she has trust issues, she's going to have trust issues, and she's going to have all sorts of insecure. Why am I not the safe thought? Or why am I not the safe person? Blah, 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 blah. So I think that's mostly the spouse's work to get right there. But I don't know if like part of it is on you to like, it is definitely on you to communicate why that is the way it is, and be honest about that, and front load that even at the beginning of a relationship or in that sort of thing. Like there's so much that needs to happen at the beginning of a relationship that should be front loaded to make sure that the relationship's going to be successful. But anyway, yeah, I think part of that is communicating like, hey, and then not only like I have this other resource because I don't want to cause chaos or further, I don't want to make the situation worse. But like, how do I want to say it? It's like just trying to be as honest as possible to the situation, while at the same time being respectful, but saying like, look, I'm like, there are things I suck at. Don't put those things on my shoulders necessarily when you're better at them than me. Yeah. And this is one of those things that you suck at, and we need to have an honest conversation about it. Like, and it could be a work towards like, I would like to open up this window of communication, but it doesn't feel safe to me. So can you do your work on your end to feel like, make me feel safer?
Yep. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in any relationship, it's going to work as required on both sides.
Yep.
There's no if, ands, or buts about it. There's not just always a one-way street, finger point. We need to both take responsibility for, if you want to even say it, the chaos we can create just from our own baggage. Whether it's talking about jealousy, which is always hard and embarrassing, and you name it, because it is. That's not a fun conversation for either side, but also extremely valuable. Actually could lead to a lot of both sides opening up and really understanding where both of you sit. So
yeah, so that brings up a thought for me. So it's like, let me try to clarify. I'm not saying that a person that feels insecure within the relationship should hold that in too.
No.
And not speak about that. They should speak about it. Like, I'll give an example. I don't know if my wife's going to like me for this one. So this is like on one end, my wife says I make her feel safe, and that's because I don't flirt with other women. I don't. She has open source to my phone. She has open source to anything she wants open source to, all this stuff, right? Like, and if she's afraid, like if I'm watching porn or something, she can go and check browser history. She can do whatever she wants, right? Like she has open source to check me on any insecure thought that might pop through her mind. So having said all that, an open, like, how do I want to say it? Basically, there was a name. I'm trying to make sure I'm safe with this, but so something had happened where a report I put out. Man, I'm trying to say this safe, and I don't know how to say it. Let's just say my wife on our shared computer found another person's name on it, a female's name on it. And gosh darn, I'm trying to remember exactly what it was that she found. I can't remember exactly what it was, but she was like, who is this person?
It raised an eyebrow.
Yeah, she's like, who is this person? And so I'm like, I have no idea. The name sounds very familiar, and I can't put, like, it's not connecting for me right now. Long story short, I took a shower, and that's where genius happens. That's where my brain works. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I know who that is. And so it's from a client from a long, long time ago that I had to put in a child protective case on, or like reach out like to child protective services on, and from a long time ago, and for some reason the name had filtered through and blah blah blah. I don't want to out myself for HIPAA reasons, but anyway, this name popped up on my computer, and my wife's like, well, who is this, sort of thing. And she didn't do it aggressively. She more did it in this, like, I saw this happen like 4 hours ago, and you just came home from work, and I've been rotating it over and over and over in my head, and I got to speak about this. And this very insecure version of herself came out and was like, what is this, And I'm like, I don't even have an answer for you. I don't know how that happened, blah, blah, blah. And then it wasn't until finally it popped up in my head. So anyway, yeah, I think that stuff can still come out, even if you're a man that does your best to provide the most security you can for your spouse, or vice versa. Like that, like these old wounds can come up out of nowhere and sneak in there. So yeah.
Well, Robbie, should we wrap this one up?
Yeah.
What do you think? 1 hour mark? It's solid.
Good.
It's solid.
Super solid. Brought
Yeah,
up some good
Kenny.
stuff. Talked about some
Kenny.
good stuff.
Oh, for sure. Kenny, I want to appreciate or say thank you for taking the time out of your super busy schedule, because we kind of bounced back and forth trying to figure out your limited availability, and rightly so, based on all of the things you have going on. So thanks for making time for us and taking notes and bringing to the table what you always bring to the table. Really appreciate that. And I'm going to finish this one off with the same thing I finish everyone off with. And when we started this podcast, because both Robbie and I understand what it's like to suffer in silence, and we know there are many men out there that continue to not know where to go, not find a place to be, not know who to talk to, and they feel alone. And that's a hard, helpless place to be. And it doesn't have to be that way. And there are men out there willing to listen, and there are men out there that are willing to talk, even though it sounds and feels helpless. You're welcome to reach out to any one of us. That's Kenny included. I'm going to speak for him. Yep. And I know he is one of those guys that would do just that. So for any of you guys out there that have made it this far into this episode that wished they had another man to talk to, there's 3 guys right here and willing to listen. So take care, and thanks again for listening and watching.